Chris Van Hollen confronts Pam Bondi. Imagine dedicating 15 years of your life to the Department of Justice, earning praise, building a career, only to be fired because you refused to lie in court. That's exactly what whistleblower Araz Raveni says happened, and his story is now shaking the very foundation of the DOJ. Senator Chris Van Hollen confronted Attorney General Pam Bondi head-on about this explosive complaint, and what followed was a revealing exchange that raises serious questions about truth, power, and accountability inside our justice system.
Madam Attorney General, yesterday, Araz Raveni filed a whistleblower complaint against the Department of Justice. As I think you know, he was a 15-year veteran of the Department of Justice. He received commendations during the first Trump administration for all his work at DOJ, but he filed a detailed account of his recent experience at the Department of Justice, saying that prior to his determination, that he was terminated after he refused to sign an appeal brief that was unsupported by evidence or the law. And he says, "I didn't sign up to lie." In response to his termination, you made a statement on Fox News a little while ago saying, "At my direction, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States, and that any attorney who fails to abide by this direction will face consequences." So, General Bondi, I guess the direct question is, he says he was fired because he didn't want to make an untruthful statement to a court of law. I have two questions. Number one, I assume you agree that zealous advocacy does not mean telling untruths to courts of law. And second, if that's not the case, what did you mean by saying he was not a zealous advocate?
Senator Van Hollen, this is all pending litigation, as you're well aware, and the timing of it, I can't discuss pending litigation. This is a whistleblower lawsuit pending within my office, but I will say the timing of it I find suspect, as he takes hits at Emil Bovee, who is one of the best human beings I know, one of the smartest, brilliant men I know, who will soon become a federal judge. And his hearing happens to be today, and I find the irony of the timing of it pretty remarkable, the lawsuit. But this had to do with attorney-client privilege information that was disclosed. I can't talk about the substance, but what I will tell you, and you have obviously my word, any zealous advocacy means to be done ethically and honestly, always. And that's what I mean by zealous advocacy. He also accused Emil Bovee of things that Todd Blanche, who is one of the best human beings I also know, my Deputy Attorney General, was in the room and said did not happen. But again, I wish I could get into greater detail. I can't because it's pending. But I stand by Emil Bovee and I stand by Todd Blanche every day, and I always will.
Well, Madam Attorney General, I will say that his account seems to have lots of information. So as you say, this will obviously be something that's litigated or reviewed through due process procedures. But I have to say that it's very, very disturbing. We've also heard from others in other departments who are responsible for implementing the laws of the United States that they feel uncomfortable about having been asked to do things that they thought were unethical. Let me go on to some of the budget questions, and I really want to follow up on my colleagues, Senator Moran and Senator Collins. But the DOJ grant funding is being sort of cut back on two fronts. One, in April, the department terminated hundreds of grant awards, notifying grantees that their current grant funds were gone, effective immediately. That included, law enforcement training grants, technical assistance awards, some dating back to fiscal year, I think, 2017. So, question number one is, are you going to be releasing those funds? The second concern regarding grants has to do with the monies that were appropriated in this fiscal year in March. And my understanding is that DOJ is withholding an overwhelming number of notices of funding opportunities, NOFOs, meaning that grantees who rely on these grants, including many who provide services to victims of crimes, are literally in some cases running out of money. For example, the department's biggest grant-making component, the Office of Justice Programs, has only posted one notice for fiscal year 25, NOFO notice. So if you could answer the question with respect to both those pieces.
Sure, and that's a very valid question, Senator. The notices will be going out in coming weeks about the grants. And we did cut grants by 6%, and I'm here to tell every senator, if we did cut a grant that you care about that is specific to your state, please contact me. I've turned on grants that were cut off. So please, if that happens, there's an appeal process, but you can pick up the phone and you can call me, and I would be more than happy to look at that. I never want to take away a grant that is actually helping Americans, helping victims, helping law enforcement, and we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and many of those are being appealed already, but you have my word, we will look at all of those, absolutely.
Thank you. And in terms of the other piece of the question, when the notices for information will go out, because the fiscal year obviously is, running out, and we are hearing from lots of entities that are waiting for those notices so they can apply for the grant funding.
Yeah, yes, Senator. The notice of funding is consistent with our priorities, and they're finalizing it right now. It will be going out very shortly.
Very shortly. All right. Thank you.
It'll be posted on a rolling basis too, I believe.
Okay. If you could just keep us posted on that. And I would appreciate it, Madam Attorney General, if you could have your team or respond to a letter that about 30 senators wrote to you on this topic of the prior fiscal year funds that were frozen.
The tense exchange between Senator Chris Van Hollen and Attorney General Pam Bondi during a recent Senate hearing cut straight to the core of two critical questions about the Department of Justice. Can it be trusted to uphold a law with unwavering integrity? And what happens when whistleblowers dare to challenge systemic issues within it? The case of Erez Ruvini, a 15-year DOJ veteran, lies at the heart of this controversy, and his story is far from a mere footnote. This isn't some partisan agitator chasing headlines. Ruvini is a career professional who served under multiple administrations, earning commendations for his dedication. When he publicly declared, "I didn't sign up to lie," it wasn't just a resignation, it was a piercing alarm bell signaling potential ethical rot behind the DOJ's closed doors. Ruvini's allegations are stark. He claims he was fired for refusing to support a legal brief that lacked factual or legal grounding, a move that would have required him to mislead a court. For a DOJ attorney, whose oath demands fidelity to the truth and the rule of law, this is no small matter. It's a direct clash between personal integrity and institutional pressure. Senator Van Hollen seized on this, pressing Bondi for answers. Her response, however, was telling in its evasiveness. Instead of directly refuting Ruvini's claims, she sidestepped, citing procedural limitations due to ongoing litigation. She then pivoted to defend her allies, like Aileen Cannon and Todd Blanche, emphasizing their commitment to ethical advocacy. But here's what stands out. Bondi never explicitly denied that DOJ attorneys are being pressured to mislead courts. She leaned on vague assurances, stating that zealous advocacy must always be ethical, without offering concrete evidence that the standard was upheld in Ruvini's case. This omission speaks volumes. If the Attorney General can't unequivocally dismiss such a serious accusation, it fuels skepticism about the DOJ's internal culture. Ruvini's case isn't an isolated incident, it reflects a broader pattern across federal agencies. Time and again, we've seen government professionals from intelligence analysts to environmental regulators express unease when asked to push policies or legal arguments they deem unethical. Whistleblowers like Ruvini take enormous risks, career sabotage, financial instability, and public scrutiny, just to uphold their principles. When their warnings are ignored or, worse, met with retaliation, it sends a chilling message: stay silent or pay the price. This dynamic widens the accountability gap, allowing potential misconduct to fester unchecked. The hearing also exposed another troubling issue: DOJ grant funding. Bondi admitted that grants were cut by 6%, impacting critical programs like law enforcement training, anti-gang initiatives, and services for crime victims, including domestic violence shelters and support for families grieving homicides. She tried to soften the blow, pointing to an appeal process and encouraging senators to call her directly if programs in their states were affected. But let's unpack that. An appeal process reliant on political lobbying isn't a solution. It's a symptom of a broken system. Instead of stable, merit-based funding, programs are left in limbo, forced to compete for reinstatement through back channels. For communities grappling with crime or victims seeking justice, these cuts aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they're life-altering. A domestic violence survivor waiting for shelter funding, or a town fighting gang violence can't afford delays driven by bureaucratic or political whims. These funding cuts raise deeper questions about priorities. Why should essential services hinge on discretionary decisions rather than being safeguarded by consistent, transparent oversight? The DOJ's mission is to serve justice, yet slashing grants for victim support or law enforcement training undermines that goal. Bondi's suggestion that senators pick up the phone might sound pragmatic, but it risks turning funding into a political favor, where well-connected regions or programs get priority over others. This approach erodes fairness and leaves vulnerable populations, like victims of violent crime or under-resourced police departments, at the mercy of an unstable system. The hearing laid bare two fundamental cracks in the justice system. First, a culture that may punish whistleblowers for prioritizing ethics over compliance. Second, a funding process that subjects vital programs to arbitrary cuts and political influence rather than ensuring steady, equitable support. Both issues point to the same question: is the DOJ truly fulfilling its mission to serve the American people impartially, or is it being swayed by loyalty to individuals or partisan agendas over truth and accountability? This isn't just about one hearing or one whistleblower, it's about the integrity of an institution that shapes our democracy. Whistleblowers like Ravini are often the first to sound the alarm when power strays from principle. Historically, figures like Daniel Ellsberg during the Vietnam War, or more recent whistleblowers exposing election interference, have been pivotal in holding the government accountable. Protecting them isn't just about fairness, it's about preserving the checks and balances that keep our system honest. Similarly, funding for justice programs shouldn't be a political football. Laws like the Victims of Crime Act of 1984 were designed to ensure steady support for those harmed by crime, yet budget cuts threaten that promise. As citizens, we have a role to play. Hearings like this one shine a light on hidden struggles, but their impact depends on public engagement. If we ignore these issues, whistleblowers will continue to be silenced, and critical programs will erode quietly. But when we demand transparency through following hearings, contacting representatives, or supporting reforms like stronger whistleblower protections under the Whistleblower Protection Act, the DOJ is forced to reckon with its shortcomings. Ask yourself, should whistleblowers like Erez Ravini be punished for refusing to lie, or should they be safeguarded as defenders of justice? Should DOJ funding be a political bargaining chip, or should it be a stable commitment to fairness and public safety? These are the conversations we need to have, and they start with staying informed. Read the reports, watch the hearings, and don't look away when the truth is uncomfortable. The DOJ's integrity matters because it touches every corner of our society, from the courtroom to the community center. By holding leaders accountable and insisting on ethical conduct, we can ensure the Department of Justice lives up to its name. If this breakdown resonated with you, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into issues that shape our world. The truth matters, and together, we can ensure it's not